The Chargers are ready to unveil their secret weapon Week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs. No, it's not Justin Herbert. No, it's not their elite defense, or even their first-round running back Omarion Hampton, or any of those undrafted rookies. The secret weapon for the Chargers is someone who hasn't exactly been under the radar, but has been underappreciated. And that's Najee Harris, who just made his return to the Chargers lineup, and Mekhi Becton, who just made his return to practice a couple weeks ago. What's up, everyone? I'm Sam Peña, a Bolt fan in the Berg for Chargers Digest, where we talk about all things Lightning. Today we're talking about the Chargers rushing offense, specifically how the additions of Najee Harris and Mekhi Becton are going to take what was a middling rushing attack last year and become, hopefully, a potent offense in 2025. So, let's talk about it. Whenever you mention Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh, the first thing that comes to your mind is running the football. This isn't anything new that I'm telling you. Everyone who saw Jim Harbaugh go to the Chargers immediately thought that they were going to suddenly become a top-tier rushing attack. In fact, Jim Harbaugh has consistently spoken about how he wants to create a dominant running game for the Chargers and how that'll help Justin Herbert become even better. He called offensive linemen the tip of the spear and has repeatedly mentioned that the Chargers want to be able to finish games rough and tough. So, when he came over to the Chargers last year, we believed they would have a top-tier rushing offense. That didn't materialize whatsoever. In fact, the Chargers were just 19th in rushing offense last year. A lot of that had to do with the fact that their running backs were a little bit weak and their offensive line was also a little bit weak. No disrespect to J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards, but simply put, they're not elite tier running backs. And we all know the Chargers' struggles along the interior last year with Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman, and Trey Pipkins. Now, is there much reason to be more optimistic going into 2025? Well, yes and no. The no would be the fact that the Chargers really haven't upgraded too much on that offensive line and devastatingly lost Rashawn Slater to an early injury. The Chargers struggled last year with both yards after contact and yards before contact, rating just 19th in yards after contact, 25th in yards before contact, and devastatingly only 27th in rush run success rate. So, going into 2025, obviously you would think the Chargers would be investing in trying to fix that. That didn't seem to be the case, at least along the offensive line. The Chargers pretty much kept things the same along the interior of the offensive line, but they did add Mekhi Becton, and that's the first secret weapon, I think, for this Chargers offense. Now, Mekhi Becton used to be a left tackle when he was with the Jets. He was a first-round draft pick, but things never panned out for him in New York. Then he went to Philadelphia, where he transformed his career with the Eagles because they moved him to guard. He's a massive human being, standing over 6'9" and 360 pounds, and that showed last year in Philadelphia, where he was consistently clearing out rushing lanes and using his superior arm length to be able to prevent defensive tackles from getting into his chest. Because of that, he had one of the top run grade metrics according to Pro Football Focus last year in the league. His pass blocking wasn't quite to the same level, but we're talking about the rushing attack, and that's something Harbaugh wants to establish, and Becton could help him with that. The Chargers envisioned that Becton and Alt together would be a duo on the right side, but unfortunately they're going to be split up, with Alt now moving to left tackle following Rashawn Slater's injury. But Pipkins has shown some ability to get some movement in the running game, so I do expect that running right will be a lot better for the Chargers this year than it was in 2024. Now, Roman has shown that he can get a lot of rushing yards out of subpar talent from the running back room. If you take a look at his time in Baltimore between 2019 to 2022, they had quite a bit of success with running backs like Gus Edwards. In fact, they were 13th in carries. Despite that, though, they were 4th in yards before contact, 2nd in yards before contact per carry, 8th in yards after contact, and 4th in yards after contact per carry. During that time, they consistently had rushing attacks that were amongst the top in the league. You go back even before that to Frank Gore. Frank Gore had 4 of his best seasons, all 1,000-yard rushing seasons, under Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. That's something the Chargers desperately want since they haven't had that for quite some time. Their last 1,000-yard rusher was Melvin Gordon in 2017. Before that, they hadn't had a 1,000-yard rusher since Ryan Matthews, and then before that, they had a string of 1,000-yard seasons out of LaDainian Tomlinson. 2,000-yard rushing seasons in over a decade of football play, simply put, is not going to cut it in the NFL. The Chargers needed to upgrade, so they did. But it wasn't the offensive line that they focused most of their efforts in upgrading. It was the running back room. They went from J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards to Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton. Now, of course, everyone is talking about Omarion Hampton. Why wouldn't they? He's a phenomenal talent. First of all, he's everything you want in terms of size, speed, and quickness. He is just a flat-out athlete. Brett Coleman mentioned that he was one of the best out there during the combine and workouts. He said that you could just watch him play and you would see the ground shake underneath his feet as he would run. That's what you want out of a running back. Omarion Hampton's numbers are also impressive. He was in the 97th percentile in yards after contact per attempt at 4.3. The last 2 seasons he averaged 24 carries a game, 150 yards per game, and 1.3 touchdowns. So basically, he can create before the line of scrimmage and he can create after the line of scrimmage. That's something the Chargers desperately want. Now, he didn't explode in the preseason, but we did see several runs where he showcased that physicality. Some people have referred to him a little bit as kind of a poor man's Derrick Henry. I think he plays the game a bit differently than Derrick. He's definitely a better receiving option than Derrick is, but you can see the physicality in his game when he just pushes linebackers and cornerbacks out of his way. He's not someone who's going to necessarily shake and bake you to be able to get a big gain, but he is capable of breaking off a long run due to his sheer physicality and the speed that comes along with it. But we all know Hampton is great. The secret weapon, though, I think for the Chargers is going to be Najee Harris. And I want to preface this by saying I don't think Najee Harris is going to be God's savior of the Chargers. I don't think Najee Harris is suddenly going to become the best running back in all of football. We know what Najee is at this point in his career. He is a good, not a great running back. But sometimes you don't need a great player to be able to elevate your team. You just need the right player. And Najee definitely is that. Now, in 4 seasons with the Steelers, Najee had 1,000 yards in every single one of those seasons, and he averaged over 4 yards per carry in the last 2. So, things look good on paper for Najee, but he never was someone who solidified himself as the best back in Pittsburgh, and the reason for that is because he simply put lacks the explosiveness needed to be able to break off those big runs. But that doesn't mean that he's not a good fit for what the Chargers are doing in 2025. Najee brings 2 things to the table that the Chargers need. He brings health, something they've lacked. In fact, something that's a little bit ironic given the eye injury he suffered, but we believe he's going to go week 1. And secondly, he brings the ability to create yards after contact. In 2024, Najee had a broken tackle percentage of 20.9%, one of the best in the league, and his yards after contact was nearly 70%, and he averaged 2.8 yards after contact. Both of those numbers are in the top 15 of the league. It's staggering to look at that. Nearly 70% of his yards came after contact. Now, obviously, he didn't create much in the air, in the passing game, but simply put, the Chargers aren't going to be looking for that. They're going to be looking for somebody who can create after contact. The Chargers have a secret weapon, and they are going to unleash it against the Chiefs week 1. Here's to hoping that it's successful. Thank you all so much for watching once again. I'm Sam Peña with Chargers Digest. We're trying to build the channel from the ground up here. I would love it if you guys could like and subscribe or leave a comment. Let me know what you want to see me talking about again in the future. We're hoping to be able to also get some more equipment in here as well to be able to upgrade the setup. Let me know what you'd like to see. And once again, Bolt Nation, remember, bolt up.